Now it's finally time to get into the core of this course, which is actually making the 2D action platformer. Over the remaining sections, you'll learn all of the necessary steps and best practices to create a game like this. In section 4, which you're watching currently, we'll cover the basics such as importing sprites, creating the character blueprint, setting up input bindings, setting up character animations, and how to make the character move. Section 5 will be all about creating the player's projectiles, which will be our main method of attack. We'll first create the projectile by itself and cover collision settings, and after that actually make the player character play an animation and shoot the projectile at the correct position. Lastly, we'll also implement a system that limits the maximum amount of shots that can be active on the screen at any given time, which is important for performance, but also has some game design implications, which we'll get into. Section 6 will be all about setting up a health and damage system. We'll create the health system in a modular fashion so it is clean and that we can use it for both the player and all of the different enemies we'll build. We'll also cover how to implement material flashing on damage for better readability and also how to knock back and stun the player when receiving damage. In section 7, we'll implement a lot of the advanced player abilities. First, we'll use the enhanced input system to set up a charge shot mechanic. This will allow us to hold the shoot button to charge up a stronger version of the projectile and shoot it when letting go. We'll also go into how to use the cube grid system to graybox levels, since we'll need this to test our wall slide and wall jump, which we'll create after this. To finish this off, we'll also create a ground slide and handle all edge cases and moments where we need to cancel the slide. Section 8 will be about respawning the player after defeat. First, we'll just spawn at the player start at the beginning of the level, but we'll then also implement a simple checkpoint system. Lastly, we'll create a fall detector that will also trigger the defeated state of the player. This can be used for pits, but also for lava and other things that should lead to an instant defeat. In section 9, we'll create 4 different enemies for our game and also their AI behavior. First, we'll create a crab that just keeps on walking forward, but turns around when hitting a wall or before falling down a ledge. Next, we'll create a lizard enemy that is stationary and shoots fireballs in certain intervals. After that, we'll create our first flying enemy, which is a bat that has 2 waypoints, which we can freely set in the level and will fly back and forth between them. And lastly, we'll create a demonic eye that senses when the player comes close and will start to chase after it. Section 10 will teach you the basics of how to create UI through widgets in Unreal Engine. And we'll then apply the knowledge to designing a health UI and then also making it functional by updating it whenever the player takes damage. In section 11, you'll learn the basics of how we can play sound effects. In this project, there are 3 different categories of sound effects: one-off sounds that we can play from the blueprints, animation-dependent sounds such as footsteps, and looping sounds such as charging up the projectile. And we'll go through implementing all of those. In section 12, we'll have a look at how we could use what we've created so far with 3D maps from the marketplace to create a 2D-3D hybrid look for the game. After experimenting with that though, we'll switch over to making the game completely 2D and first prepare the tile sets and tile maps needed for that. We'll then update some project settings and camera options that are best practice for making 2D only games. I'll then walk you through my thought process when planning out levels. Throughout the next couple of videos after that, we'll make all of the necessary tile maps, place enemies and gimmicks in the level, and finalize everything by creating an exit door and a level clear trigger. This concludes the course and you'll have a fully working 2D action platform by the end of it. As a bonus, there's another section for how to create a ladder climbing system, since this is a staple of Mega Man clones and Metroidvanias. However, here things get a bit more complicated and I decided to not make this section mandatory. However, I encourage you to take on the challenge and also try to clear this section.